Can you use both Nexus Mod Manager and Mod Organizer to mod your game? And if I'd rather not do that, how do I migrate my entire mod collection over to Mod Organizer from Nexus Mod Manager? Those are the questions I'm going to answer in this video. So far in this series, I have covered how to install mods onto what is basically a fresh installation of Skyrim, how to update mods, and how to create profiles and how to use them. But the majority of the people who are thinking of using Mod Organizer have already modded their game, probably with a mod tool such as Nexus Mod Manager. And so of course the obvious two questions are, can I start adding mods with Mod Organizer whilst leaving my existing mods on Nexus Mod Manager, or how hard is it to transfer all of my existing mods over to Mod Organizer? And that is what I'm going to cover in this video. Now, I will warn you, this video is going to be exceptionally long because this is a reasonably long process. That is, I'm afraid, a bit of a time requirement for at least the migration process. However, I am getting a little ahead of myself. So can you use Nexus Mod Manager and Mod Organizer to mod the same game? So for example, Skyrim. And the simple answer is yes, you can. I wouldn't recommend it. I generally recommend only using one way of managing your mods if at all possible, but you can do it. And perhaps you want to try that just to try out Mod Organizer without uninstalling all your mods using Nexus Mod Manager. So what I've done is I have restored my Skyrim data folder to its former glory, with all of the mods installed via Nexus Mod Manager in the data folder. So if I go to my Skyrim data folder now, it's filled to the brim with ESPs, BSAs, loose files, and so on. And as you can see, Nexus Mod Manager is now managing my mods once more. I also uninstalled Mod Organizer and then reinstalled it. So it's a completely fresh installation of Mod Organizer. So we can see how it will look if you install it with, Skyrim already modded by Nexus Mod Manager. And there you go. As you can see, it's detected a lot of the mods I've got installed, and it seems to have imported my load order as set up on Nexus Mod Manager. It has activated these ESPs, which are detected as dummy files, which are not needed if you are using Mod Organizer to manage your archives, and there are several of these, so I can actually remove those. However, I'm not going to right now. I'm just going to test it. And there is also a warning up here telling me that it thinks there is a mod order problem. We'll come back to that. I'm just literally now going to run this to see what happens. Now remember, this is completely and utterly modded by Nexus Mod Manager. I have not used Mod Organizer to add a single mod at this point. I'm just testing to see if running the game from Mod Organizer will allow me to load my save game. I can tell you I know for a fact it will. This is my fairly heavily modded playthrough. The only thing that's different is I don't currently have any NB installed, but there you go. You can see the cloak, you can see the breath from wet and cold, you can see the clock, and if I go to the mod configuration, there are all my mods, the ones that have MCM. So you can see it's actually working. So now we know that works, let's install a mod using Mod Organizer. And I've chosen Tropical Skyrim again because it gives instant feedback as to whether it's working. So I will activate that on top of all the Nexus Mod managed mods. And as you can see, it's added both Tropical Skyrim and Tropical Skyrim birds to the bottom of my load order. I'm going to worry about this later on, and we're going to see if this works. And as you can clearly see, Tropical Skyrim is installed. Do I have all of my other mods? Well, there's the clock. If I check I've got mod configuration, which indicates Sky UI has been installed. I have the cloaks. Everything seems to be working just fine. And I can tell you now, it does work. It's pretty much the exact same game I've been playing the entire Let's Play, only with Tropical Skyrim on top of it. Now, Mod Organizer did complain a little bit. It put up a warning suggesting there is a potential mod order problem. I'm going to close this for now, and as you can see, it did order the mods in reverse alphabetic order, which is almost certainly wrong. They probably should be ordered more or less in the same order that the ESPs come, the ESPs for those mods, because in general, that will be how they are loaded if they are BSA files. So if a mod comes with a BSA, it will get loaded in the same order as its ESP. If you're using the standard game with mods installed with Nexus Mod Manager. That is not true with Mod Organizer. Mod Organizer is much more powerful and can let you manipulate the resources independently of the plugins. I will talk about that more in another video. But for now, let's just have a quick look at exactly what Mod Organizer is complaining about. I'm going to go along to this problem and click on it, and I will get a little message. The conflict resolution order for some mods containing scripts differs from that of the corresponding ESP. This may lead to subtle, hard-to-locate bugs. You should reorder the affected mods. Left list. This side. There is no way to reliably know if each of these changes is absolutely necessary, but it's definitely safer. If someone suggested you ignore this message, please give them a proper slapping from me. Do not ignore this warning. The following changes should prevent these kind of errors. And then it lists what you should do. And it'll tell you which options should be moved and where. Now you can do this yourself if you want. However, if you click the fix button, they have a beta feature that will rearrange the mods to eliminate the possible ordering conflicts. And I'm going to click yes, and it has reorganized them. And as you can see, I now have no warning here. So it has now moved. Let's have a look. Unofficial Skyrim patch. Okay, there you go. Dawnguard is now above the unofficial Dawnguard patch and so on. So this is the sort of bare minimum that needs to be done. I would probably spend some time reorganizing this a lot more. But again, that's out of scope for this video. So as you can see, you can do this. You can run Mod Organizer. You can install mods from Mod Organizer on top of the mods you've installed with Nexus Mod Manager, and it does work. It is not something I recommend, though. For short-term usage, I can imagine there's an argument to be made that it will be okay. Perhaps you want to test Mod Organizer out and just try a few things. Yes, okay, I suppose it could. Perhaps you just want a special profile for certain things. Perhaps it's just a profile that's based upon your normal load order with lots of extra texture packs. Perhaps that's one reasonable use. But as a day-to-day mod management tool, if you're going to use Mod Organizer, I would recommend using Mod Organizer. Make the commitment and migrate all of your mods from your previous management tool, in this case Nexus Mod Manager, over to Mod Organizer. Long term, I think it is just much safer. And of course, if you don't do that, you don't get many of the very, very useful and powerful features that Mod Organizer gives. So it is completely up to you. You can do this. I am not saying that you will have problems. I am not saying that things will go wrong. I am just saying personally, I would recommend against it. I would go for a full migration. So, how do we go about migrating from Nexus Mod Manager to Mod Organizer in its entirety, to just sort of take our entire load order and move it over to the Mod Organizer? Probably the most obvious way of doing this would be to deactivate the mod one at a time, or all of them if you would like, and then go along to the Nexus page and download the mod again, but this time with Mod Organizer activate it from Mod Organizer, and you have the mod transferred, migrated. However, there are a few weaknesses with that method. You'll notice that, well, the top two mods straight away are not the latest versions. The 360 Walk and Run Plus is version 3.02, whereas the latest version is 3.12. And here's the thing. There's no guarantee that the version I'm using at the moment is still available on Nexus. And this would mean you'd have to download a different version. And that is not a good idea. It is not a good idea to update mods in a migration process, partly because whenever you update a mod, I would always recommend updating one mod, trying it out and seeing if it works. And also some mods have extra requirements. The mod says, before uninstalling this, go into an interior area, save the game, uninstall the mod, wait 30 days. You know what I mean? You've seen some of these mods, they've got complicated update procedures, so it's dangerous to just blanket update your entire mod list. So that is one potential weakness. And the second weakness with this method is it is the most time-consuming method there is. It really is, and therefore not something I would recommend. If you wanted to do this, if you really wanted to go through the process of just downloading each and every mod, what I would highly recommend is updating each of these mods to the very latest version, or at least to a version that is still available, or make sure you have the version somewhere. You can find them on your own system. I'll show you that later. And get your save game working with your new updated load order, and then migrate across. Again, little time consuming, not what I would recommend. However, there are two other methods. There is the potentially quick and easy way, and then there is the long way. Unfortunately, the quick and easy way does come with some risk, as I will show you. And I'm going to cover that first because that's probably the one most of you are going to want to try. But before we do either of those methods, I highly recommend backing up your existing load order, your existing Nexus Mod Manager setup, and your existing load order text files. I will show you all of those. Just in case you do something wrong or something goes horribly wrong in the process, you should be able to roll back and go back to how it was without any worries. I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Step 1, back up the data folder. So if you go along to your Skyrim game, find your data folder and either compress it into an archive and store that archive somewhere, or simply copy it and paste it somewhere. I have done that already because it's kind of time consuming. Copy it, and I pasted it into the backup folder, and I called it, and I renamed it to data NMM. That is my data folder as installed by Nexus Mod Manager. You'll also see a copy of the vanilla data folder, the way the data folder would look with the vanilla game. I have a copy of it right there I've done already. Do that. That is probably the most important step. Next, find where you have got Nexus Mod Manager installed. If you can't remember that, go along to Nexus Mod Manager, the settings icon, and if you look at, say, Skyrim, it will tell you where the mod directory is and where the install info is, and you'll be able to see, on mine it's F-Games Nexus Mod Manager. That's what I'm looking for. So, there you go, Games Nexus Mod Manager, and of course for me, Skyrim. You're wanting to back the install info up. Now, for me, it's pretty small. I'm going to add it to a RAR file. You could copy it if you want, but just make sure you have a copy of this. This is all the information that Nexus Mod Manager needs to know which mods it's got installed. Oh, and while we're here, remember I said you could actually find copies of the mods you downloaded with Nexus Mod Manager, even the older versions. You'll find them in the mods folder there. As you can see, a lot of 7Z, zips, and RAR archives. These are actually all of the mods the actual install files, the files we downloaded from Nexus. So you can find them here. We will be coming back to that later on. You don't actually need to back that up. You can if you want to be very, very safe. That is a large folder, probably larger than your data folder, but if you want to back it up, you are more than welcome. However, this process does not delete the mods from there unless you want it to. So you don't have to back that up. And lastly, what you're going to want to do is back up your plugins and load order text files, and you can find those usually if you go along to your main drive under users, whichever user you're logged in as. Mine is Gopher, app data, local, Skyrim. You want to find load order text and plugins text, copy both of these and put them somewhere safe. I've put mine in a backup NMM folder. I created that folder myself and I'll paste them there. That means that I can get my load order back and don't have to worry about clicking all of the ESPs again. So you now have all of the relevant files you need to recover if something goes wrong. You have them all backed up. So now you can stop worrying and we can really mess around, do what we like, experiment a little bit, and see what we can do about migrating it across. The first method you can try when migrating from Nexus Mod Manager to Mod Organizer is to actually use a tool that is built in to Mod Organizer itself. But before you get all excited, because this tool is obviously part of Mod Organizer, the person who created Mod Organizer does not actually recommend it and has stopped working on this feature, at least until Nexus Mod Manager changes the way it handles mods. The people I've spoken to on the STEP community do not recommend it, and after spending the best part of 4 whole days trying to get this work for myself, I don't recommend it either. And if you are wondering why the hell I'm discussing it if I wouldn't recommend it, it is purely because if I didn't cover it in this video, I know people would be going, wait, don't you realize there is an import feature? So it's literally to head that off. Of course, it is possible that Nexus Mod Manager will change the way it handles mods, and perhaps the creator of Mod Organizer will start working on this tool again. But for now, this is a feature that I would say is an interesting idea, but not quite working, at least not for me. I will show it to you. I will give you an idea of what it's supposed to do, because you might want to try it. You might want to try it because I suppose there is a chance that for you and your load order, this tool works just fine and it will save you a little time. But I can almost guarantee it's probably going to be a mess for me. However, that also gives me an excellent chance to demonstrate how easy it is to restore things back to how they were if you do make a mess of the migration process. So, the first thing that happens when I try to run this tool is it will give me a warning that if I am using a version of Nexus Mod Manager that is below 0.5, I might have some issues because it will only restore files that are installed on the disk. I am actually using 0.510, so I shouldn't have a problem. I'm actually going to close Nexus Mod Manager whilst I do this. I'm going to click OK. I can then choose which mods to migrate. So perhaps there are some mods here I think are not a good idea to migrate across. For example, the reprocker, that might be one that I might want to look at and do manually. It's going to be completely up to you. However, I'm going to try and do the whole lot of them, the whole load order at once. I click next, and then you get this warning. It is, of course, reminding you this is a beta and barely tested. Use at your own risk. And there are 3 options. The first one is to just copy the mods across, but it leaves your Nexus Mod Manager installation alone, so that you would have to go back to Nexus Mod Manager and uninstall all the mods yourself. All this would do, the copy function, all it would do is transfer the mods. That is probably the safest route actually, because it would mean you don't have to try and restore your Nexus Mod Manager setup. It will leave that untouched, and once you've got all the mods across to Mod Organizer and you're happy that they will work, you could open the Nexus Mod Manager and disable all the mods yourself. Copy and delete saves you a step. That copies all the mods across and then it deactivates them from Nexus Mod Manager. Move is pretty much the same, except instead of copying the mods across, it will move them. And if your Nexus Mod Manager and Mod Organizer are installed on the same hard drive, that process will be faster. However, I do not recommend that, because if something goes wrong, you could be losing some files. So I generally would not recommend that. I would recommend either copy only or copy and delete if I was going to recommend this process, which, as I mentioned, I don't. I then click copy and delete and let it do its thing. And almost immediately you can see a problem that keeps recurring for me. It says I've already detected a mod called SkyUI. Not totally sure why, because I haven't got any mods installed with Mod Organizer. It might be detecting that I've got this one installed as part of the non-Mod Organizer mod. So I will put SkyUI Mod Organizer version for now. Of course, when I'm finished and I deactivate all the mods in Nexus Mod Manager, excuse me, the original SkyUI mod will disappear, and I could probably rename this. However, there you go. Now I'm starting to get files, cannot find a certain file. I may even get things that, oh no, same error. I may even get ones that say they cannot read a file or cannot copy a file, and so on. So I'm getting errors already. So here we are. The import has completed. I got several errors in several mods. Sometimes it told me which mod was having the error. For example, I had a problem with the Better Stealth AI for Followers mod. So I've noted that down, and I'm going to have a look at that. And there are also a few other mods that it has picked up, possibly have only been imported, partially because the files were overwritten during installations of other mods, which is to be expected. So here is another list of mods that he basically suggests you should reinstall these mods soonish. Basically, just deactivate them or delete the mod, to be honest, and reinstall with Mod Organizer. So I will have to look at all of these, so I should take a note of all of these, plus any of the mods that reported errors as well during the process. And then it will ask me whether I want to import the mod archives downloaded through Nexus Mod Manager. Yes, you do. You do. This will actually put all of the mods you've downloaded into Nexus Mod Manager into your Downloads tab. That is something you do want. And that process will take a little time as well. You may find Mod Organizer becomes unresponsive for a while. Don't worry about it. When it says not responding, just let it do its thing until it's finished, basically. Okay, it seems to have finished. And if I scroll down, I now have a lot of mods imported from Nexus Mod Manager. I'm not sure that's all the mods I've got, though. If I do a quick look at SkyUI, the Mod Organizer version, it has the BSA and the ESP, which is what I would expect. It has the mod ID set correctly and the version. Let's have a look. The unofficial Dragonborn patch is out of date, but seems to have been imported correctly. Yes, I know actually I need to update this. And several mods seem to have been installed, well, many mods seem to have been installed correctly. If I go to the Downloads tab, I now have a lot of mods in it. You will see this little symbol, and it is telling me information is missing. I will show you how to get that information a little later on. I'm not going to do it now, because what I would like to do, because that doesn't look like the full list of mods to me, what I'd like to do is have a look at Nexus Mod Manager and see which of my mods have been successfully taken across. And immediately I can see many of them have been disabled, but many have not. So for example, 360 Walk and Run Plus. Do I have this? Let's order this by mod name. Nope, it would seem that 360 Walk and Run Plus has not been taken across. I'm going to have to do that one manually. Same is true with amazing follower tweaks. No, amazing follower tweaks has not been disabled. Oh, right, yeah. It's here. If it doesn't have a checkbox in front of it, it's the Nexus Mod Manager mod, not the Mod Organizer mod. In fact, an easy way to see this is to actually look at things like, well, actually, if it's still here as a non-Mod Organizer mod, it's not been deactivated properly here. I can, of course, refresh here, which will just do a quick check. So there you go. FCO follower commentary overhaul has not been taken across. Where's that one? Follower commentary overhaul. You can also see some of the mods have got pretty bad names. 3D NPC. I'm fairly sure that is the immersive NPCs. Sorry, interesting NPCs. I'm fairly sure it's this one. Yes, 3D NPC. Yeah, okay. But basically, you can see it's not completely done the job. I've got a lot of these mods that I'm going to have to do manually, and honestly, it's not really saved me a huge amount of time, because not only do I have to do all of these manually, I'm a little worried that the ones that have been added have not been added correctly as well, because I did get many problems and many errors, and so honestly I would not be comfortable with this tool. I would not be comfortable with the load order it has created for me. However, if you've decided to give this a try and you were successful, I'd love to hear in the comments down below. And the same if you tried it and had a disaster. You could tell me about that as well. Misery does like company after all. However, now I'm in a situation where I have pretty much messed up my Nexus Mod Manager installed mods. My load order is now complete garbage. My Nexus Mod Manager installation list is completely wrong. And, you know, if I hadn't made a backup, I would now be panicking ever so slightly. Well, not panicking, but I would have my work cut out. However, I did make a backup, and I can restore things, and that is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to show you how to basically restore everything. Okay, so I've got a completely messed up Nexus Mod Manager set up at the moment, and I'm going to fix it. So the first thing is to get the data back. I can pretty much delete the data folder. I do not need that anymore. And I go to wherever the backup was. I've got data NMM, and I could move it back and then rename it, but I'm actually going to copy it. I am going to copy it so that I still have this backup in case I mess everything up a second time. So I'm going to copy that into the Skyrim folder. Now, of course, it's going to be called data NMM. Did I copy both of them? I think I copied both of them. I don't need the data vanilla. It's named data NMM. Once it has finished copying, I'm going to rename that to data. So quickly rename that, and I'm going to delete the vanilla folder. No idea why I copied that one. And that is now the data back for my game. I also need, if you remember, we sorted the load order and the profiles text. That was in users, whoever you're logged in as, app data, local, Skyrim, and then I had two files, load order and plugins.txt. I'm going to Control-C to copy those and paste them right here. That now means the game will work exactly as it worked before. My load order is now back to how it was. All of the BSAs, all of the resources, all the ESPs. My game is now exactly as it was before I started the process. But that doesn't fix the Nexus Mod Manager setup, so I'm going to go back to where my Nexus Mod Manager was installed, which is, for me, the Games folder, Games, Nexus Mod Manager, and in the Skyrim folder, because that's what I'm migrating, I'm going to delete the entire install info folder. That's where it describes which mods are installed, and of course that has changed because I've restored my data. And then I'm going to extract here. I'm going to extract the entire folder. If you didn't create a RAR file, if you copied it somewhere as a folder, just copy it back here. So I've now restored the install info, and now if I open up Nexus Mod Manager, and there you are, all my mods restored and activated, and my plugins back in the order they're supposed to be in. My game will now work perfectly, Skyrim will run, I will be able to load my saves, and Nexus Mod Manager is back to how it was, completely restored. So let's migrate from Nexus Mod Manager to Mod Organizer the way I would recommend. And step one is to do a backup of your data folder, your Nexus Mod Manager settings, and your load order, as I showed you earlier in this video, just in case something goes wrong. The next step is to clear the data folder. Basically, make it as it was in the vanilla game. And to do this, I am pretty much going to delete all of the folders. So this is all of the loose files, every single one of them. Just going to delete. Remember, I've made a backup, so I should be okay. I'm going to delete all of the loose files. I am also going to delete almost all of the ESPs and BSAs. I'm only going to leave behind the big ones that the vanilla game has. Now I am actually deleting some of the vanilla files here. Don't worry about it, we're going to get them back. So I'm going to delete up to Dawn Guard. I don't think there's anything. It really doesn't matter if you accidentally delete something, but I'm going to try not to. I'm going to delete up to Dawn Guard, and then Dragonborn, obviously, that DLC. I'm going to then delete up to Hearthfires. And then from the high-res packs I'm going to leave, and then I'm going to delete up to Skyrim. There you go. I don't think I need the AI BSA, to be honest. No, I do not. But I need all of these. And I need the Skyrim ESM. And after that, I actually think I can delete everything. As I said, it does not matter. Now, the reason I'm not deleting these is simply to save time. You can, in fact, delete the entire data folder if you want. You can just completely delete everything in there. That will work as well. However, the game will then need to reload these files, which will take a little longer. So, I've deleted a lot of files. Now I need to make sure I've not deleted anything necessary. And you do that by going along to the library section of Steam and getting to the Elder Scrolls Skyrim, right-clicking and clicking Properties. And then under Local Files, Verify Integrity of Game Cache. And what this will do is it will now check the entire game to see which files are missing, and it will then replace them. Once the validation process has finished, it will tell you how many files it's failed to validate and will reacquire them. That will include replacing existing files if it thinks they are corrupt. So be aware, if you've done something like cleaned one of your master files, it may get replaced in this process and you'll have to clean it again. You could make a backup of those and put them back in. And now the Elder Scrolls will reacquire those files. If I quickly check the data folder, you will see there are now 3 folders. It has added some folders. You should also do the same for the creation kit if you have been using that. Again, validate the files. This time it has 15,000 files to reacquire, but they are pretty small, so it shouldn't take too long. As you can see, it's already started. And when it's done, you'll have a data folder that looks like this. Well, if you have the creation kit. The vanilla data folder. You could also uninstall some of the SKSE files if you wanted, or the ENB files, but there's no real need. You are going to need SKSE, and the binary files are not managed by the Mod Organizer or Nexus Mod Manager, just the scripts. And the same is true of the binaries for ENB, so you can leave them in here if you like. And if you want to be super safe, so to speak, very, very clean, go along to your local C disk, users, and your logged in user. then app data, local, Skyrim, and edit the plugins. And you could edit it with Notepad or Notepad++, it's up to you, and delete everything except the official files. So probably it's going to look something like that, and delete all those. Okay, so that is the high-res texture packs plus the 4 ESMs that come with the game, except Skyrim ESM. You don't need Skyrim ESM there. I'm actually going to copy this before I save it. So I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to edit Control A, Control V to paste it there and save that. And then just double check it did actually save those. That's just reset the load order to only include official files. You probably don't need to actually do that, but I like to be totally and utterly safe. So we now have a completely blank Skyrim, a completely unmodded Skyrim, at least from the data folder's point of view. Don't worry, if you go along to where you've installed Nexus Mod Manager and go to Skyrim, the install info is still untouched. If I started Nexus Mod Manager now, and I don't recommend you do it, it would think all of those mods were still installed because I've not touched this folder. And I'm actually going to leave it that way because, of course, I can always restore my Nexus Mod Manager data folder and then boot up Nexus Mod Manager and it will carry on regardless. So at this point, I'm just going to ignore that. But this time, go into the mods folder. And you're looking for all of the archives. That's basically all of the loose files, not the folders, but all of the loose files below. These are your archives. There's 7Z archives, there are RAR archives, and zip archives. Those are your mods. Those are the mods that are listed in Nexus Mod Manager. You're going to select all of those, and you're going to right-click and copy, or Control-C. Don't cut. Leave them there. That way, Nexus Mod Manager is completely untouched if for some reason you have to go back to it. Now you need to find your mod organizer installation folder, which for me was Steam, Steam Apps, Common, Skyrim, mod organizer, and then go to the, download. Go to the downloads folder, right click and paste and let it do its thing. It is now pasting all of the Nexus Mod Manager downloads into the mod organizer downloads. And once those have finished, open up Mod Organizer once more. And as you can see, I've got a nice clean setup. I can probably alter the priority of these items just to make sure. And seeing as I'm managing the archives this way, I can reset those. But if I now look at the Downloads tab, I can see, again, all of the mods, absolutely every one of them that I had in Nexus Mod Manager here. You can see the same symbol that's saying information is missing, but we can fix this reasonably easily. We just right-click and select Query Info. It'll fetch the info, and it now knows it's part of the Altmary domain. And keep doing that all the way down. Now, occasionally, you're going to find mods that have issue, or files that have issue finding the info, and you'll be presented with this type of option. Now, it's asking me which of these files is the correct one, and from looking at it, it's fairly obvious that it's the top one. Normally, what you're looking for is a number that corresponds to the mod ID on Nexus, and usually that is actually part of the file as well, 13486, and that will give you some clue. It's probably this one. The 2.3 is probably version 2.3, so this is probably the one I want. However, if I press cancel and I get prompted, I can type the ID in, 13486, to confirm it. Now, if you're not totally sure whether that mod ID is correct, you can reopen your Nexus Mod Manager, and in fact occasionally it might be a good idea to have this open at the same time. Find the mod as long as you know it, which is winter is coming, and then click here and it will show the mod ID, which is 13486. 13486, which is correct. So let me close that. That one has now been updated. Occasionally you are going to find mods such as this, 3D NPC v302, blah blah blah. This is actually interesting NPCs, and if I query info on this, it gives me a lot of options. So I press cancel, hoping to just type in the ID, and nothing happens. Do it again, and this time I'm going to have to choose one of the options. The problem is, you can see this, I am using v3_202. That probably means I'm running version 3.02, and in fact if I check interesting NPCs, I am running version 3.02, even though it's been updated to 3.07, and that file isn't anywhere on this list. I can select 307, for example. I can even select, sorry, that one there, or 306, but not 302. So I'll pick one of them, and this will set this to the correct mod, the correct ID, but unfortunately the incorrect version. This is obviously pretty unfortunate, however it is not that big a problem. If you go along to the place where you placed the downloads, the archives, and find the file in question, right below it now there is a meta file. You can open that in Notepad or Notepad++, and it is a simple matter to change the version to 3.02. I also suggest changing the name to represent what the file originally was. The file was originally called 3D NPC v302. So if I change that, Control S to save it and go back. It doesn't update automatically, but if I close Mod Organizer and reopen it, go to the download and find that file, you'll see now v_02, and the update is version 3.02. So it's now correct. And if you make a mistake and do something like query info, cancel, and you get a mod ID, and instead of typing one in, you cancel it, you may have problems if you try to query info. Again, you'll get this fail to request file from Nexus. The simple fix for that is to find the meta file for that mod, which was amazing follower tweaks. Find the meta file, extend that, and simply delete it. That will reset this, and then you can once again decide which of the mods it actually is. This also works if you have selected the wrong file and you want to reset it and do it again. You literally just delete the meta file for the archive, the one that ends with .meta, and you'll be able to requery. Occasionally you're going to find a file where you query the info and nothing seems to happen. And you can do it several times and absolutely nothing seems to happen. And if you check the downloads for that, it seems to have a meta file, and if I open it, it's completely blank. The usual reason for this is that that file no longer exists on Nexus. It has been removed for some reason, and so basically it doesn't have any good information. The way I get around this is I just copy the name, as long as I know what the mod is. I then edit the meta file and I make sure the name is, and the name and the mod name are both correct. In this case, Populated Dungeons Cave Ruins, and I'm using version 1.0. The latest version is 1.7 and is available but not on Nexus. So I'm going to take the repository Nexus off and the Nexus ID. Control S on this, and it won't update immediately, but when I reload Skyrim Mod Organizer, I will see, let's have a look. There we go, Populated Dungeon Cave Ruins version 1.0. You will get a similar sort of thing if you try to query info on a mod that you've packaged yourself. For example, the SKSE script, which you don't download from Nexus. So it's generally not necessary to query info on those type of files, and it kind of highlights them in the download list and lets you know these are files that are not connected to Nexus. Depending on how many mods you have got and how careful you are to check each one to make sure the information is correct, it'll probably take you between about half an hour and 3/4 of an hour to do your entire mod list. That's what it took me. But in the end, you will have an entire list of mods that will match all of the mods that you downloaded with Nexus Mod Manager. You have successfully migrated your Nexus mods over to Mod Organizer mods. Of course, importing these mods to Mod Organizer does not end the task. We now have to install them all, which of course will take some time. The good news is it does not matter what order you install the mods in, because none of the mods will overwrite files from other mods. Any conflicts you will sort out in this panel after you have installed them. It is one of the powerful features of Mod Organizer. However, I'm going to be covering that in another video. For now, my task is to install all of these mods. Now, remember the plugins and load order text files that we had that were located in C, users, for me, Gopher, app data, local, Skyrim, and I made backups of them, load order.txt. This is actually kind of useful. You might want to keep this open, and once you have installed all of the mods, of course you're going to have to activate them, but it's useful to know which ESPs you had selected. It will make the process of installing these mods, well, a little easier. And of course, the save games themselves give you an indication of which ESPs are missing, which can be helpful in ascertaining which mods you need and which of the ESPs in each mod are required. And in fact, as this is the last save I made, I think I will use this as a guide and begin by installing the unofficial Skyrim patches. And so after quite some time, I have all of my mods installed. I have activated them. Now I activated them in the order that the missing ESPs occurred so that my plugins are close to the correct load order and the mods themselves are probably close to the right priority. However, I can tell you they're not in the right priority yet. This little warning is telling me that. I will talk about that in a little while. If I go and check the saves and look at the saves, I can see I'm still missing the reprocker ESP. Now, those of you who don't know, the reprocker is something that helps with Skyrim and makes all of the mods compatible with Skyrim. I have it installed, but you have to run it. And that's a little more complicated when using Mod Organizer, and I'm going to cover that in a completely separate video. So, for now, what I'm going to do is a tiny little hack, just to see if I can load my game and how well it's working. And basically the hack is that I'm going to use the reprocker that was created by the old reprocker for my Nexus Mod Managed data folder. I'm going to find that because I took a backup of it, obviously, and I'm going to copy it to my desktop and then make it visible. I am now going to add this to an archive called reprocker.rar. I can remove that and then hide it again, and I can now go along and add this mod reprocker.rar. It's going to ask me for a name, and I'm going to temporary hack. This is just to get it working. This reprocker should be correct. I can test it manually, but I know I formed this one. I have now added the reprocker. I will activate this. And when I now look at my plugins, I have a reprocker and my save game will handle it. It's not quite in the right order. However, I'm going to allow loot to sort my load order. Mod Organizer comes with a cut down version of loot. It's not as powerful as loot, but it will do the job of sorting your load order fairly well. I will show you how to install loot and run it through Mod Organizer again in another video. Actually, that will be the next video. And there it is. I now have the load order that looks correct. I do have this warning, and what this warning is telling me, well, basically the mods are in a small They have a small problem. They are in the wrong order. I can fix this. Yes. I know exactly what it is. It's reordered these files. So now my mods are at least in a fairly good order. I might need to do some tweaking, I'm not sure yet, but as I've mentioned, that is going to be the subject of another video as well. Now, one last thing I'm going to check. If I go to my save, you can see there are no missing ESPs. There are no missing ESPs. However, I want to make sure I've not got any new ESPs that I didn't need. I mean, it might not be a bad thing. However, at this point, what I want to do is have the exact same load order. And I can do that by checking my old load order. Now, this is my old load order done by Nexus Mod Manager. And if I go along to the mod organizer profiles, Richard the Librarian, it has its own load order. Now I'm going to edit this with Notepad++. This is for Richard the Librarian, and this one is actually the one from the desktop. So this is the one I have been using. This one is 136 lines long, which means it's got 136 ESPs. This text, the text from the profile, has got 137 lines. It has one extra line, which means something has been added. Something new has been added. Now, because I'm using the Notepad++ program, I'm going to move to other view so I can see these side by side. Notepad++ has a really useful plugin called Compare. If you don't have that plugin sorted for Notepad++, it's pretty easy. Go along to Plugin Manager, Show Plugin Manager, find the one that's marked Compare and hit Install. If you're not using Notepad++, do. It's such a useful tool. It's such a nice way to edit text files, and it has a lot of very powerful things. And this one is very useful. I just go along to Compare, and what it will do is it will identify areas where there are some differences. So for example, it has found that a matter of time ESP, it exists, but it's in a different place. Same with Move It, LWT, and so on. And you can see where things are the same but have been moved. But you will also, there it is. You'll also see things that don't exist on one side. Better Quest Objectives aftpatch.esp. Whilst installing these mods, I have added an extra ESP. This is my original load order. This is my new load order in Mod Organizer, and I have added a new ESP. Now, in this particular case, that's probably an ESP I would like. Better Quest Objectives, I use that, and I do use AFT, so a patch between the two is probably quite useful. So I'm actually going to leave that in. Why not? It's just I've added a patch. So I am now pretty happy that my current load order is identical to my old one, with the exception that it has one extra plugin. If I wanted to be really safe, I could possibly disable that plugin and try running the game. But that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to try running the game and see if my save loads. So I only have a single save. That makes it pretty easy. And hopefully I will not get one of those messages saying missing ESP. Nope. Everything is looking good. And just keep our fingers crossed. And it's looking good. My ENB seems to be working. Dynavision is working. iHUD is working. I have my cloak. Let's just check my weapons to see if the Sky Reprocker is working. I should change weapons a few times. Dawnbreaker looks good. Aureol's bow looks good. The Star Rim shortbow looks like it might be a little bit too much damage, but you never know. Because of the way Skyry works, there are times when it resets your perks. Oops, excuse me, wrong key. There you go. Once you've wielded it for a little while, it changes the damage. It's all to do with which perks add what damage. And that looks about right for my Stalrim short bow. So my damages all look pretty good. And mod configuration, everything seems to be there. Right now, I think this has been successful. I am now running my old save on my mod organizer load order, and everything seems to be running just fine. And seeing as I have got to this point, I'm going to make a backup. It has just created a backup of my mod list, and if I want to at a later date, I can restore this backup and it will restore all of my settings. A very useful feature. Now, I'm not quite finished. There are still plenty of things to do. I do want to check over here and see which files are winning the conflicts, because of course it does differ ever so slightly. With Nexus Mod Manager, the file that was installed last wins the conflict, whereas with Mod Organizer, the file that is placed with the highest priority wins the conflict. And occasionally, you may have to do some tweaking. I'm going to have to look into that. As I've said, that is for another video. I also do not need these dummy ESPs. There is no point having them. I can disable that, and this. Many ESPs that are not needed because I am managing my archives with Mod Organizer. That, of course, is a helpful thing. It has reduced the number of ESPs in my list. But essentially, I'm done. I now have my game transferred over to Mod Organizer, at least my mods transferred over to Mod Organizer, and I can begin to add new mods, tweak mods, perhaps update some of these mods. Of course, as I keep mentioning, there are several things I need to do, including getting Skyri and the reprocker working correctly so I can get rid of this temporary hack. And of course, I could clean up my plugins list a little by removing all of these dummy ESPs from the mod themselves by adding them to the optional section so they don't appear in this list, which would make it a little neater. But all that is for another day, because we are definitely finished with this video now. It has gone on long enough. I do apologize for its length, but as you can see, there is quite a lot to cover. In the next episode of this series, I'm going to cover adding other executables to Mod Organizer, so you can run things like loot, Test 5 edit, and of course the Skyri reprocker. We're going to need to be able to do that to sort Skyri out. If that is of interest to you, you are more than welcome to join me. And until then, remember, as always, have fun.